Do you ever have that moment where you know how to do something, but you have a hard time actually doing it the way it's supposed to be done? This is landing a FA-18 Hornet on a runway. There's probably a bunch of specific ways you're supposed to do these things, and I don't really care of the specific way it's supposed to be done. You know, whether it's a case one recovery case, which is more for carriers, and or doing the braking maneuver and all this other shit. But ultimately, what I wanted to show you is what you're supposed to do with landing a Hornet on a runway, flying straight in. We're ignoring traffic patterns and all that other shit. But so this is kind of a recap of our navigation video that we just did, but capitalizing on that, adding a little bit more HUD symbology in the landing configuration when you got your gear down and all that other shit, and talking about different things that we're looking at while landing, I guess. So currently we're at 13,000 feet and heading at 310 degrees with a slow, nice pace of 230 knots, and we'll just go ahead and level this off. I got to select the window. And we'll go ahead and turn our autopilot barometric hold on. Okay, so we'll just hold here. So we do know from the previous video, if we want to land at a runway, we need to have this TACAN frequency. Not all air bases have a TACAN frequency. So if we look at our F10 map, we know Aldafra does at 96 X-ray because we saw that in the last video, channel 96. But if we were to look at, let's say, Liwa, oh, it does too. Channel 121. And what about this guy? This guy does not have one. He does have a VOR. We're not getting into that at this point. But this doesn't have a TACAN. So we would need some kind of waypoint or something like that to do our course line off of. We don't have that here. So we could get the, up in this corner here, we can have the coordinates, lat and long, for this. And if we wanted to, we could put a lat and long right at the end of it, create a waypoint, and create a course line off of it, right? Obviously, we don't have an F10 map in real life, so we're just going to land back at, what's the closest one with a TACAN? Probably Al Dafra. So we'll just go back to 96 X-ray. So we're going to tune our TACAN, go to TCN, TACAN, 96, enter. Make sure X-ray is selected, transmit and receive, and turn it on. And we'll see that information come up here. We got our MA code, so we know we tuned into the right base or TACAN station. It's at 128 degrees for 24 miles. So we got to turn around, obviously, right? So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we'll do that. Whoa, I forgot I had autopilot on. So if you have autopilot on and you start manually moving the stick, it'll allow you to do small adjustments, but if you exceed that, it turns off autopilot, and if you were too far on the stick, it just goes crazy. So that's what that was. All right, so we'll go ahead and do a nice 30-degree bank here, and we'll hold our attitude here. We're going to go ahead and box TACAN, so oops, that goes into the HUD. So we got this here, and we know we're 28 miles, and we're at 17,000 feet, so we're way high. Autopilot off, come down. And we're going to start our descent and kill our throttle. All right, so as we're descending and turning towards it, we do know from the last video that the runway was either 310 or 13 or 130. So we're just going to land at 130. There's no other aircraft here, and that makes the most sense. So we're going to turn our course line from our TACAN station, because we have that box and selected. Our course line, we're going to do this. and we're going to punch in 130 degrees and hit enter. So now we have our course line. We're too far to the right. We need to turn around even more. So we're going to speed up our turn here with a nice 45. So now we're parallel with the line. We want to come into that line and be right on that line. So we're going to head this way towards the line. So we're going to level out or level the plane, I guess. We're going to keep descending to about 3,000 feet. So we're heading towards the line at about a 45-degree angle from that line, as you can see here. And we start to see the line move, we'll turn into it and roll into 130 degrees. And I'll decrease our descent rate so we're not dropping too fast. So we're at 5,000 feet per second. We're going to drop that to about 2,000, which is probably around 5 degrees nose down. Okay, that's about 3,000. Line's still not coming in. And again, we can see where we are in relationship to the airport and the line here. We can zoom in a little bit at 20 miles and 10 miles here. We can see we're approaching the line. You see the line moving, so now we got to bank towards the direction of the line. And we're going to go to 130 degrees. So I was a little aggressive on that. We're going to turn our autopilot barometric hold on to maintain that. Because we're below 5,000, we're actually going to turn on our radar altitude, or rad alt. So we have our air to ground measurements here. We're currently 20 miles away from the airport. Now there are specific altitudes you're supposed to be at. And I'm going too slow. There are specific altitudes you're supposed to be at certain distances, but again, I'm not worried about the specific traffic pattern you're supposed to take. I just kind of wanted to talk about the symbology and what's happening on the HUD while I'm landing. So you can see we're still heading towards that, but not very quickly. So we're going to speed that up a little bit. We want that arrow pointing right straight out of our HUD, or our velocity vector. So it's getting pretty close, and we do know, because we tuned our course line at 130 degrees, we want the compass to say 130 degrees when this is in the center. So we're pretty close there. We got 20, well, yeah, about 20 degrees. 15, I guess. 10, oops, autopilot was on and I forgot about it. Okay, so we're at 130 degrees. If we roll out, you can see we're pretty close to lined up to it. So we're heading straight at the TACAN emitter pretty fast, so I'll slow down, at 130 degrees. Now we can start to see the runway here. There's the runway. So we got to come to the right a little bit and then turn left to line up to the runway. So we're going to do that. When our speed is below 250 knots, we can lower our landing gear. So I need to accelerate our deceleration. I need to slow down faster, so I'm going to deploy our speed brakes, which is just a key bind on my HOTAS. Pitch up a little bit so we're not descending. All right, speed brakes off. We'll deploy the landing gear, and then when that gets done, I'll pause it. Okay, so more HUD symbology. When your landing gear goes down, you have a wider line on your pitch ladder for the horizon, so it's easier to see your horizon. You can kind of see that solid line here. Additionally, we have our, I don't know what this symbol is called. We're just going to call it our nose symbol. That's where our nose is pointing in relationship to our velocity. Our alpha is not displayed currently, and that's mainly because of this E bracket here. And let me zoom in and show you. So this E bracket here shows us our speed, on speed indicator. We want this horizontal line on our velocity vector to be perfectly centered on that E bracket. And that gives us an alpha of about 7.5 degrees, which is what we need to be to land. So that, let me zoom out. Oops. So the Harrier, the Hornet is designed to basically come at a 7.5 degree alpha and crash onto the aircraft carrier. So that's how you land it. There's no flaring on this like with the F-16 or any of the other, basically any jet you would fly commercially. You kind of come in at a low alpha, come in and slow down, and at the last second flare and then land. We're not doing that. We're just coming in at 7.5 degrees and then hitting the runway. That's how we land. We want to hit the runway with a velocity vector. Oops. This we want to say 750 or less. So negative 750 or less. Okay. So if we land at 1,000, like I did in one of the previous videos, you hit the ground too hard and you have the potential to break the plane. So what we're going to do is after the landing gear comes out, we get this E bracket. We also can confirm the landing gear is out through these lights here. We're going to lower the flaps as we start to slow down. And we don't need to worry about what speed we're supposed to be to land because we're just lining our velocity vector up with that E bracket. And we're doing that through the trim setting on our stick. So there's a binding on the stick. You move nose up or nose down trim to line that velocity vector up perfectly with the on-speed angle of attack indicator, which is the E bracket. We also have this over here, these lights here, oops, which shows our on-speed angle of attack. The circle that you're seeing right now means you are on speed, which we are. We're between the brackets here. The horizontal line is pointing between the brackets. But if it's above the E bracket, that means you're going too fast and you need to slow down. Move your speed down. Conversely, okay, I'll just put my flaps down. Okay, I'm gonna crash. So I can't show you the too slow. There's the too slow. The red caret means you're too slow. All right. Which is really nice, is after you trim your aircraft to be on speed, you just use your throttle to pitch. So you add throttle will inherently make your nose go higher. If you decrease throttle, it'll make your nose go lower. So you're going to be playing with the throttle quite a bit to get it right where you want it. So we also want to line up the velocity vector at the end of the runway. And we also want the runway to be straight. So I'm coming left a little bit and rolling in, adding a little bit because we're dropping, but you can see we're on speed. So we're at 7.5 degrees, which is great. We're also looking here, which is good too, because it's less than 750. Now our alignment is terrible because I'm talking, but you get the idea. So 730, 40, 50, we need to throttle up because we're too fast. Or too slow. Fast on the descent. And then brakes and air brakes. So you notice there was no flare. We just came down and landed. We didn't flare up at the last second. So that's the other HUD symbology, is that E bracket that I wanted to show you. So when we're coming in for a landing, you can see me try to get that E bracket, the velocity vector right in the center of the E bracket through our trim. After that's done, you do not pitch with the stick anymore. It's all with the nose or with the throttle. So as you increase throttle, the airplane gains lift and goes nose up. As you decrease the throttle, the airplane loses lift and goes nose down to try to gain speed to get more lift, right? So that is just airplane shit. Okay, airplane magic. So if I'm going here and my velocity vector is too high, I just, instead of pitching down like I normally would, throttle down, slow down a little bit, and that'll bring your nose down. And that's the magic behind all that stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover. Now, obviously, if you're landing on a carrier or landing on a runway where you're trying to simulate the real world, there are specific traffic patterns you're supposed to follow. If you hear a case 1, case 2, or case 3 recoveries, that's talking about landing on a carrier. So a case 1 would be in full daylight, fantastical, you can see for 10 plus miles. Case 3 would be nighttime or rain or fog or something like that, where you're using your instruments to land. Case 2 is something that they only do in training that we will never show you. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Maybe we'll kind of go through in a future video what a case 1 landing is supposed to be versus a case 3 landing, because they do simulate that in DCS, which is kind of cool when you're talking with ATC. It's the only part of DCS where the ATC is cool. Yeah, so that's landing on a runway, you looking at your instruments that you have and how to navigate to it and using the new HUD symbology. So that's that.